On December 7, 1992, 16-year-old Suzanne Capper disappeared from her home in Manchester, England. She was not a rebellious teen, nor was she known to vanish for long. When she failed to return after a visit to acquaintances in Boston, her family grew concerned. Days later, a horrifying discovery would reveal her fate and shock the nation. Suzanne had been lured to the home of 26-year-old Jean Powell, a woman she occasionally stayed with. Powell's home had become a gathering place for a dangerous group that included Bernadette McNeely, Glenn Powell, and 2 teenage boys. Suzanne had been living intermittently between her own home and Powell's, where she had hoped to escape troubles at school and find a sense of belonging. Instead, she found herself trapped in a nightmare. Over 6 days, Suzanne was held hostage, tortured, and brutally abused by the group. The perpetrators shaved her head, beat her, injected her with drugs, and played loud music for hours on end to disorient her. They accused her of stealing a coat and other petty grievances. The cruelty escalated to an unimaginable level, driven by peer pressure, drug use, and mob mentality. On December 14th, the group decided to kill Suzanne. They forced her into the trunk of a car and drove her to a wooded area in nearby Stockport. There, they poured gasoline over her and set her on fire. Astonishingly, she survived the attack and managed to crawl to a nearby road, where she was found by 2 motorists. She was rushed to the hospital, suffering burns over 80% of her body. Before succumbing to her injuries 4 days later, Suzanne managed to identify her attackers. Her final statement was clear and detailed, allowing authorities to swiftly arrest those responsible. The investigation stunned the community. Media coverage revealed how a young girl had been tortured to death by people she had once trusted. The sheer savagery of the crime, coupled with Suzanne's youth and vulnerability, led to an intense public outcry. At trial, Jean Powell, Bernadette McNeely, and Glenn Powell were all convicted of murder. The court heard extensive evidence about the psychological and physical torment inflicted on Suzanne. The brutality was not spontaneous, but systematic, prolonged, and planned. Suzanne's voice, through her dying declaration, ensured the killers could not deny their role. The judge described the murder as an act of merciless cruelty. All 3 adult defendants received life sentences. Jean Powell and Bernadette McNeely remained imprisoned for life. Glenn Powell also received a life sentence. The 2 teenage boys involved, who were minors at the time, were given lengthy sentences for their roles in the abuse and abduction, and were later released under new identities. The case led to national soul-searching in the United Kingdom. It prompted discussions about child protection, the influence of drugs and group violence, and the failure of neighbors and others to report earlier signs of abuse. Suzanne Capper's name became a symbol of innocence lost to senseless brutality. Her family worked to honor her memory and advocated for greater awareness of youth vulnerability in volatile environments.